What happens when the most powerful alpha king in North America marks an omega, who was never supposed to be his? What happens when that same omega discovers a truth so devastating that running becomes her only option for survival? Welcome to a story of forbidden bonds, shattered trust, and a love so fierce it defies the very laws of nature itself. If you're ready to dive into a world where pack politics can kill, where one mark can change everything, and where sometimes the greatest enemy is the mate bond itself, then you're in the right place. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any part of this epic paranormal romance. Because trust me, you'll want to see how this impossible love story unfolds. Chapter 1. The Marking That Changed Everything. The scent of pine and morning dew couldn't mask the metallic tang of blood that hung in the air of the Crescent Moon Pack territory. I pressed my back against the rough bark of an ancient oak, my heart hammering so loud I was certain every wolf within a mile radius could hear it. 3 days. It had been 3 days since Alpha King Damon Blackthorn had done the unthinkable, marked me, Lyra Ashwood, the pack's outcast omega, as his mate. The memory burned through my mind like wildfire. His massive frame towering over me in the moonlight, those storm-gray eyes blazing with an intensity that made my knees weak. The way his canines had extended, gleaming white in the darkness, before he'd buried them deep into the curve of my neck. Mine, he'd growled against my skin, his voice a rumble that seemed to vibrate through my very bones. You've always been mine, Lyra, from the moment you presented, but that was before I'd discovered the truth. Before I'd learned why the Alpha King had really chosen me. A twig snapped somewhere to my left, and I froze. The forest around our pack house had always been my sanctuary, the one place where I could escape the constant reminder of my lowly status. Now it felt like a trap. Lyra. The voice that called my name was deep, commanding, and achingly familiar. I know you're here. Your scent is everywhere. Damon. Even now, 3 days after I'd fled from his bed in the middle of the night, the sound of his voice sent unwanted shivers down my spine. The mate bond pulled at me like a physical chain, demanding I go to him, submit to him, let him claim me completely. I bit down hard on my lower lip, using the pain to center myself. I couldn't give in. Not after what I'd learned. Come out, little wolf. His voice was closer now, maybe 50 yards away. We need to talk, as if there was anything left to say. As if words could undo the betrayal that had shattered my world. I closed my eyes and let my mind drift back to that horrible moment of discovery. 2 nights ago, I'd woken in Damon's massive bed, my body still humming from his touch, the fresh mark on my neck throbbing with a pleasant ache. He'd been called away on urgent pack business, leaving me alone in his private chambers, something that should have been an honor for any omega. But curiosity had always been my weakness. I'd wandered to his desk, drawn by a stack of official-looking documents. The letterhead had caught my eye immediately. Council of Alpha Kings, Bloodline Preservation Initiative. My hands had trembled as I'd read the contents. A breeding program. A systematic plan to strengthen alpha bloodlines by carefully selecting omegas with specific genetic markers. And there, highlighted in yellow, had been my name alongside a detailed analysis of my exceptional fertility indicators and rare recessive traits. The truth had hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't his destined mate. I was livestock, carefully chosen, strategically marked, bred for the sole purpose of producing the next generation of Alpha Kings. Lyra. Please. Damon's voice was softer now, tinged with something that might have been pain if I didn't know better. Let me explain. I pressed deeper into the shadows, my wolf whimpering at the distress in our mate's voice. But I couldn't trust that instinct anymore. The mate bond was just another tool of manipulation, another way to ensure my compliance. A branch cracked directly above me, and I looked up to see a massive black wolf perched on a thick limb, his storm-gray eyes locked on mine. Even in wolf form, Damon was breathtaking, easily twice the size of any normal alpha, his midnight fur gleaming like silk in the dappled sunlight. He shifted back to human form in one fluid motion, landing on his feet with predatory grace, Naked and magnificent, he stood before me like some ancient god of war, all sculpted muscle and raw power. "Found you," he said simply. I scrambled to my feet, putting the oak tree between us. "Stay away from me." "You're my mate." The words came out as a low growl. "You belong with me. I belong to no one." The words exploded out of me with more force than I'd intended. Especially not to someone who sees me as nothing more than a broodmare. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe even hurt. But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "You read the documents." It wasn't a question. Every single word. I lifted my chin, meeting his gaze despite the way my wolf was practically prostrating herself in submission. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I was too stupid to understand what you were doing?" "It's not what you think, it's exactly what I think." I backed away as he took a step forward. "You needed an Omega with the right genetic markers to breed your perfect little alpha heirs, and lucky me, I fit the bill. Tell me, Damon, how long have you been watching me? How long have you been planning this?" His jaw clenched, and for a moment he looked almost vulnerable. "Since you presented at 18, the admission hit me like a slap. 4 years. You've been planning this for 4 years. Lyra, no." I held up a hand, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I won't be your breeding stock. I won't be reduced to nothing more than my ability to produce alpha children. I'm leaving." "Like hell you are." The alpha command in his voice was so strong it nearly drove me to my knees. "You're marked. You're mine, and you're not going anywhere." But I'd been preparing for this moment for 3 days. I'd practiced resisting his commands, building up my mental walls, reminding myself over and over that I was more than just an Omega to be owned. "Watch me," I said, and shifted. My wolf was smaller than his, built for speed rather than power. I used that to my advantage, darting between the trees with the agility of my kind. Behind me, I heard Damon's roar of fury, followed by the sound of his own shift. The chase was on. I ran like my life depended on it, because in many ways, it did. If Damon caught me, if he dragged me back to the pack house, I'd never escape again. The mate bond would only grow stronger with time, and eventually, I'd lose the will to fight it. The forest blurred past me as I pushed my wolf to her limits. I could hear Damon behind me, his massive paws thundering against the forest floor. But I had a head start and I knew these woods better than anyone. I made it to the pack border just as the sun began to set, my lungs burning and my legs shaking with exhaustion. The boundary markers loomed before me, ancient stones carved with protective runes that had guarded our territory for centuries. Once I crossed them, I'd be a rogue, packless, vulnerable to any alpha who wanted to claim me, but it was better than being a prisoner. I shifted back to human form and looked over my shoulder one last time. Damon stood at the edge of the tree line, his wolf form magnificent and terrible in the dying light. Even from a distance, I could feel his rage, his desperation, his absolute refusal to let me go. "I'm sorry," I whispered, knowing he could hear me with his enhanced senses. "But I won't be your possession." And with that, I stepped across the boundary line and into the unknown. What Lyra doesn't know is that her escape has triggered something far more dangerous than just an angry Alpha King. Ancient. Enemies have been waiting for exactly this moment, when the most powerful pack in North America shows weakness, and they're about to make their move. Will Lyra survive as a rogue Omega in a world that sees her as prey? And what will Damon do when he realizes that losing his mate might cost him everything he's sworn to protect? Don't miss Chapter 2, where the real danger begins. Chapter 2. Rogue Territory. 6 months later, the diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps, casting harsh shadows across the cracked vinyl booths. I kept my head down as I refilled coffee cups, my movements efficient and practiced. 6 months of living as a rogue had taught me the art of invisibility. "More coffee, hon?" I asked the trucker in booth 3, my voice carefully modulated to sound human, normal, unremarkable. He grunted his approval, not even looking up from his newspaper. Perfect. The less attention I drew, the better. Living in the human world had its advantages. No pack politics, no alpha commands, no constant reminder of my supposed inferiority. But it also meant suppressing every instinct my wolf possessed, living in a constant state of half-existence that left me feeling hollow and disconnected. The bell above the diner door chimed, and I glanced up automatically, a mistake I immediately regretted. 3 men had entered, and everything about them screamed danger. They moved with the predatory grace of shifters, their eyes scanning the room with the systematic thoroughness of hunters. The one in the lead was tall and lean, with the kind of pale skin that suggested he spent most of his time in the shadows. Vampires. My blood turned to ice. Vampires and werewolves had maintained an uneasy truce for decades, but that didn't mean individual vampires couldn't cause problems for lone wolves, especially rogue omegas with no pack protection. I ducked my head and tried to make myself invisible, but it was too late. The leader's nostrils flared slightly, and his lips curved into a smile that revealed just a hint of fang. "Well, well," he murmured, his voice carrying easily across the diner despite its low volume. "What do we have here?" I forced myself to keep moving, to continue my rounds as if I hadn't noticed them. But my hands were shaking now, and the coffee pot rattled against the ceramic mugs. "Excuse me, miss." The vampire appeared beside me so quickly I didn't even see him move. "I couldn't help but notice your unique scent." The other patrons in the diner seemed oblivious to the supernatural tension crackling through the air. Humans, I'd learned, had an amazing ability to ignore what they didn't want to see. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said quietly, not meeting his eyes. "Oh, I think you do." His hand shot out faster than lightning, gripping my wrist with enough force to bruise. A rogue omega, all alone in the big bad world. How unfortunate. The coffee pot slipped from my nerveless fingers, shattering against the linoleum floor. The sound seemed to break whatever spell had held the diner in its grip. And suddenly everyone was looking our way. "Let go of me," I whispered. "I don't think so." His grip tightened, and I could feel my bones grinding together. "You see, my coven has been looking for someone exactly like you. Someone with no pack to miss them, no alpha to come looking. Someone expendable." Terror flooded my system, but with it came something else. Rage. 6 months of running, 6 months of hiding, 6 months of living like a ghost. And for what? To end up as vampire food anyway? My wolf snarled inside my chest, and for the first time in months, I didn't try to suppress her. I said, "Let go." This time, my voice carried the unmistakable edge of a shifter's growl. The vampire's eyes widened slightly, but his grip didn't loosen. Feisty. I liked that in my meals. That's when the diner door exploded inward. The force of the impact sent the door flying off its hinges, and through the opening stepped a figure that made my heart stop and my wolf howl with recognition. Damon. He'd changed in the 6 months since I'd seen him. His dark hair was longer, wilder, and there were new lines around his storm-gray eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and endless worry. But he was still magnificent, still radiating the kind of raw power that made every supernatural creature in the room take notice. His gaze swept the diner and locked onto the vampire holding my wrist. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Let her go." Each word was delivered with the force of an alpha command, backed by centuries of royal bloodline and absolute authority. The vampire's hand fell away from my wrist as if I'd burned him. "Alpha King," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "We had no idea she was claimed." "She's my mate." Damon's voice was deadly quiet as he stalked forward. "And you just made the last mistake of your very long life." The vampire's companions flanked him, their own fangs extending as they prepared for a fight. But they were facing an Alpha King in the grip of mate-protective fury, and they had to know how this would end. "We meant no disrespect," the leader said quickly. "We'll leave immediately." "No," Damon said simply. "You won't." What happened next was over so quickly that the human patrons probably thought they'd imagined it. Damon moved like liquid lightning, crossing the space between himself and the vampires in the blink of an eye. There was a brief, violent struggle, and then 3 piles of ash were settling onto the diner floor. The humans sat in stunned silence for a moment, then seemed to collectively decide that they'd witnessed some kind of gas leak explosion. They began filing out of the diner, muttering about calling the fire department. And then it was just Damon and me, standing in the wreckage of my carefully constructed new life. "Hello, Lyra," he said softly. I stared at him, my mind reeling. "How did you find me? Did you really think I'd stop looking?" He took a step closer, and I could see the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "I've had trackers searching every city, every town, every hole-in-the-wall diner from here to the Canadian border. I don't want to be found." "Too bad." His eyes flashed with alpha gold. "Because you're coming home." "This is my home now." I gestured around the destroyed diner. "I have a life here. You have an existence here," he corrected. "That's not the same thing. Look at yourself, Lyra. When's the last time you shifted? When's the last time you let your wolf run free?" The questions hit too close to home. My wolf had been growing weaker with each passing day, starved of the connection to pack and nature that she needed to thrive. "That's not your concern anymore. Everything about you is my concern." He was close enough now that I could smell his scent, pine and rain and something, uniquely him, that made my wolf whimper with longing. "You're my mate. I'm your breeding stock," I shot back. "There's a difference." Pain flashed across his features so quickly I almost missed it. "Is that really what you think? After everything we shared? I think you're very good at making your livestock feel special." The words tasted bitter on my tongue, but I forced them out anyway. "I read the documents, Damon. I know exactly what I am to you." "You know nothing." His voice was rough with emotion. "Those documents, they were written before I knew you, before I understood what you meant to me. Convenient. It's the truth." He reached out as if to touch my face, then let his hand fall when I flinched away. "Lyra, I've been going insane without you. The pack is falling apart. I'm falling apart." "Find another Omega with the right genetic markers," I said coldly. "I'm sure the Council has plenty of options." "I don't want another Omega." The words exploded out of him with such force that the remaining windows in the diner rattled. "I want you, only you. Always you." For a moment I almost believed him. The raw pain in his voice, the desperate hunger in his eyes. It all seemed so real. But I'd learned not to trust my instincts when it came to Damon Blackthorne. "It doesn't matter what you want," I said quietly. "I'm not going back." "Yes, you are." The alpha command in his voice was gentle but implacable. "Because if you don't, you're going to die." I laughed bitterly. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." His expression was grim. "Those vampires weren't here by accident, Lyra. They were hunting you specifically." The word sent a chill down my spine. "What are you talking about?" "The Shadow Moon Coven has been tracking rogue Omegas for months, but they're not just feeding on them. They're using them for something else. Something that requires Omega blood and a very specific ritual." "You're lying. I wish I was." He pulled out his phone and showed me a series of photographs that made my stomach turn. Crime scenes, bodies drained of blood, arranged in ritualistic patterns. 12 Omegas in the last 6 months. All rogues, all found like this. I stared at the images, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. "What do they want?" "Power." His voice was grim. "There's an old vampire ritual that can grant temporary immunity to werewolf bites, but it requires the willing sacrifice of 13 Omega wolves during the new moon." "Willing sacrifice?" "They torture their victims until they beg for death. Technically, that counts as willing." His jaw clenched. "You would have been number 13. The room spun around me, and I had to grab the counter to keep from falling. 13 Omegas, 12 already dead, and I would have been the last. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I whispered. "Because I knew you'd think it was just another manipulation." His voice was quiet, defeated. "And maybe you're right. Maybe I am using your fear to get you to come home. but that doesn't make the threat any less real. I closed my eyes, trying to think past the terror and confusion. If this coven is so dangerous, why haven't the packs done something about it? We have. We've been hunting them for months, but they're smart. They stay mobile, never hit the same territory twice. And they've been very careful to only target rogues, wolves with no pack protection, no one to miss them. The implication hit me like a physical blow. No one to miss them.
Like me? Like you. His voice was soft, full of regret.
Lyra, I know you hate me. I know you think I'm a monster. But please let me protect you. Let me take you somewhere safe. I wanted to say no. Every instinct I'd developed over the past 6 months screamed at me to run, to refuse his help, to maintain my independence at all costs. But the images on his phone were burned into my mind. 12 Omegas, tortured and killed for a vampire ritual. And I would have been next. If I come with you, I said slowly, it's not because I forgive you. It's not because I trust you. It's because I don't want to die. I understand. And when this threat is over, I'm leaving again. For good this time? Something that might have been pain flickered across his features, but he nodded. If that's what you want. It is. Then let's go. He held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, I took it. The moment our skin touched, the mate bond flared to life with an intensity that nearly brought me to my knees. 6 months of separation had only made it stronger, and now it sang through my veins like liquid fire. Damon's eyes flashed gold, and I knew he felt it too. The connection between us, the pull that defied logic and reason and everything I thought I knew about love. Lyra, he whispered, my name a prayer on his lips. But before either of us could say anything else, the diner windows exploded inward in a shower of glass and shadow. More vampires. At least a dozen of them, moving with inhuman speed and grace. And at their head was a figure that made my blood run cold. A woman with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. Her pale skin marked with intricate tattoos that seemed to writhe and shift in the dim light. Morgana Shadow Moon, Damon growled, pushing me behind him. The vampire queen smiled, revealing fangs like ivory daggers. Alpha King, how good of you to deliver our final sacrifice directly to us. The trap has been sprung, and Lyra finds herself caught between the mate she doesn't trust and the vampires who want her dead. But Morgana Shadowmoon has been planning this moment for centuries, and she's not about to let her prize slip away. Can Damon protect the woman he loves, or will his past mistakes cost them both everything? And what dark secret is Morgana hiding about the true purpose of her ritual? The answers await in Chapter 3, where the real battle begins. Chapter 3. Blood and Shadows. The vampire queen's laughter filled the destroyed diner like the sound of breaking glass. Did you really think it would be that easy, Alpha King? That you could simply walk in and steal away our prize? Damon's body was coiled like a spring, every muscle tensed for battle. Lyra isn't your prize. She's under my protection. Protection? Morgana's ice-blue eyes glittered with amusement. The same protection you offered when you marked her as nothing more than a breeding vessel? Tell me, little Omega, how protected did you feel when you discovered the truth? The words hit their mark, and I felt Damon flinch beside me. But there was no time to process the vampire's taunts. Her coven was already moving, spreading out to surround us with predatory efficiency. The ritual must be completed tonight, Morgana continued, her voice taking on an almost hypnotic quality. The new moon rises in 3 hours, and I have waited far too long to let sentiment interfere with destiny. What ritual? I demanded, finding my voice despite the terror clawing at my throat. What do you really want? Morgana's smile widened, revealing more fang. Oh, my dear child, you truly have no idea what you are, do you? She's an Omega, Damon growled. Nothing more, nothing less. Nothing more? The vampire queen laughed again. She's the last of the Moonblood line, you fool. The final descendant of the original Omega who bound our kinds together in the ancient pact. The words meant nothing to me, but I felt Damon go rigid beside me. That's impossible. The Moonblood line died out centuries ago. So we all believed. Morgana's gaze fixed on me with hungry intensity. But bloodlines have a way of surviving, don't they? Hidden in plain sight, passed down through generations of ordinary wolves until the right combination of genes awakens the old power. You're insane, I whispered. Am I? She gestured to one of her followers, who stepped forward carrying an ornate silver blade. Tell me, little wolf, have you ever wondered why your wolf is different? Why you can resist alpha commands when other omegas cannot? Why your scent drives even the most controlled males to distraction? I had wondered about those things. All my life I'd been told I was defective, broken somehow, too strong-willed for an omega, too resistant to authority. But I'd never imagined... The Moonblood omegas were the bridge between our species, Morgana continued, her voice taking on the cadence of an ancient story. They could channel the power of both wolf and vampire, creating bonds that transcended the natural order. And their blood could grant immortality to any creature that consumed it. That's just a legend, Damon said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Morgana's eyes never left mine. Tell me, Alpha King, why do you think the Council was so interested in her genetic markers? Why do you think they were so eager to see her bred? The pieces clicked together in my mind with sickening clarity. The documents I'd found, the careful analysis of my bloodline, the emphasis on rare recessive traits, they hadn't just been looking for a good breeder. They'd been looking for something much more valuable. They knew, I breathed. The Council knew what I was. Of course they knew. Morgana's smile was triumphant. Why do you think they were so careful to keep you isolated? To ensure you never learned the truth about your heritage? They wanted to control you, to use your power for their own ends. And you're any different? Damon's voice was deadly quiet. Oh, but I am. The Vampire Queen's expression grew serious. I don't want to control her power. I want to consume it, to make it my own. And once I do, the ancient barriers between our kinds will crumble. Vampires will be able to create werewolves, werewolves will be able to create vampires, and I will rule over a new world order with the power of both species at my command. The magnitude of what she was describing hit me like a physical blow. She wasn't just talking about killing me. She was talking about reshaping the supernatural world itself. Over my dead body, Damon snarled. If necessary. Morgana raised her hand, and her coven tensed for attack. Though I'd prefer to keep you alive long enough to watch. After all, you did such a lovely job of breaking her spirit for me. It will make the final sacrifice all the sweeter. That's when Damon snapped. The transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. One moment he was standing beside me in human form. The next he was a massive black wolf, easily twice the size of any normal shifter. His howl shook the building's foundations and sent several vampires stumbling backward in shock, but Morgana just smiled. Kill the Alpha! Bring me the girl! The battle erupted with supernatural speed and violence. Vampires moved like liquid shadow, their pale forms blurring as they attacked from all angles. But Damon was a force of nature, his massive jaws snapping with bone-crushing force as he fought to reach me. I pressed myself against the wall, my own wolf clawing to be released. But I was terrified of shifting, terrified of what might happen if Morgana was right about my bloodline. What if transforming somehow made it easier for her to complete her ritual? A vampire broke through Damon's defenses, lunging toward me with fangs extended. I threw myself sideways, but I wasn't fast enough. Claws raked across my shoulder, tearing through fabric and flesh with equal ease. The scent of my blood filled the air. And suddenly every vampire in the room went still. Impossible, one of them whispered. Morgana's eyes widened, and for the first time since she'd appeared, she looked genuinely shocked. The scent, it's true. She really is. I looked down at my wounded shoulder, confused by their reaction. It was just blood, my blood. What was so special about... The wound began to glow. A soft, silver light emanated from the torn flesh, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. As I watched in stunned fascination, the light spread outward, tracing patterns across my skin that looked almost like runes. The Moonblood awakens, Morgana breathed, her voice filled with religious awe. After all these centuries, the power stirs again. The light was spreading faster now, racing along my arms and up my neck. Where it touched, I felt a strange tingling sensation, as if something long dormant was finally coming to life. Damon shifted back to human form, his eyes wide with shock and something that might have been fear. "Lyra, what's happening to you?" "I don't know," I whispered, staring at my glowing hands. "I can't control it." "Don't try to control it," Morgana said urgently, taking a step closer. "Let it flow through you. Let it awaken fully. Stay back." Damon moved to intercept her, but the vampire queen was faster. She reached me in a blur of motion, her cold fingers wrapping around my glowing wrist. The moment our skin touched, the light exploded outward with blinding intensity. Power flooded through me, ancient, primal, and utterly overwhelming. I could feel the life force of every creature in the room, vampire and werewolf alike. I could sense their fears, their desires, their deepest secrets laid bare, and I could feel something else. A connection that went deeper than blood, deeper than bone, a link to something vast and eternal that had been sleeping in my DNA for generations. "Yes," Morgana hissed, her grip tightening. "I can feel it. The power of the first Omega, the bridge between worlds. Give it to me, child. Let me take it from you." But as she tried to draw the power into herself, something went wrong. Instead of flowing from me to her, the energy began to flow in the opposite direction. I could feel her life force, her memories, her centuries of accumulated power rushing into me. "What?" she gasped, trying to pull away. But the connection held fast, binding us together in a feedback loop of supernatural energy. Through the link, I saw flashes of her past. The night she'd been turned, over 800 years ago. The decades of hunting and killing. The slow corruption of her soul as she'd grown more and more powerful. And I saw the truth about the ritual. "You're lying," I said, my voice echoing with newfound power. "This isn't about creating a new world order. This is about survival." Morgana's eyes widened in shock. "How did you—" "I can see it all." The memories continued to flow through me, painting a picture of desperation and fear. "You're dying. Your vampiric essence is breaking down after all these centuries, and you need Moonblood power to stabilize it. This isn't about conquest, it's about cheating death. Silence." She tried again to break free, but the connection only grew stronger. "The other Omegas," I continued, the truth unfolding in my mind like a terrible flower. "You didn't just kill them for their blood. You tried this same ritual with each of them, didn't you? But it didn't work because they weren't true Moonbloods. They were just practice." "Lyra," Damon's voice seemed to come from very far away. "You need to stop this. The power is too much." He was right. I could feel the energy building inside me, threatening to tear me apart from the inside. But I couldn't let go. Not when I was so close to understanding the truth. "Tell me," I demanded, pouring more power into the connection. "Tell me what really happened to the Moonblood line." Morgana's resistance crumbled under the assault, and the memories came flooding out. "I saw a great war between vampires and werewolves centuries ago. I saw the Moonblood Omegas caught in the middle, their power coveted by both sides. And I saw the massacre. You killed them," I whispered, horror washing over me. "Your kind hunted down every Moonblood Omega, slaughtered entire bloodlines to prevent the werewolves from using their power." "We had no choice," Morgana gasped. "They were too dangerous to live. But you missed one." The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. One Moonblood escaped, went into hiding, suppressed her power so completely that it went dormant for generations. "Until now." "Until you," she confirmed, her voice barely a whisper. The power reached a crescendo, and suddenly I understood what I had to do. The energy wasn't meant to be hoarded or stolen, it was meant to be shared, to create balance between the supernatural species. I reached out with my mind, touching every werewolf and vampire in the room. I could feel their surprise, their fear, their wonder as the Moonblood power flowed through them. But instead of taking their life force, I gave them something else. Understanding. Empathy. the ability to see through each other's eyes, to feel what the other species felt. For one perfect moment, the ancient hatred between vampire and werewolf dissolved. They saw each other not as enemies, but as fellow creatures struggling to survive in a world that feared them both. Then the power reached its peak, and everything went white. When my vision cleared, I was lying on the floor of the diner, Damon's arms wrapped protectively around me. The vampires were gone, not destroyed, but fled, their leader's grand plan shattered by the very power she'd sought to steal. "Are you okay?" Damon's voice was rough with concern. I tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Every muscle in my body felt like it had been put through a blender. "I think so. What happened to Morgana?" "She ran." "They all did." His arms tightened around me. "Lyra, what you did, I've never seen anything like it." "I'm not sure I understand it myself." I looked down at my hands, which had returned to normal. No glow, no mystical runes, just ordinary skin. "Is it over?" "For now." His expression was grim. "But word of what happened here will spread. Every supernatural creature in North America will know about your power within days. The implications hit me like a cold wave. They'll all want to use me. Some will. Others will want to destroy you before you can be used against them." He helped me to my feet, his touch gentle but firm. "Either way, you can't stay in the human world anymore. It's not safe." I wanted to argue, to insist that I could take care of myself. But the events of the night had shattered my illusions about independence. I was something more than just an Omega now, something that made me a target for every power-hungry supernatural in existence. "So what do I do?" I asked quietly. "You come home with me." His voice was soft, almost pleading. "Let me protect you." "Let the pack protect you." "As what? Your prisoner?" "Your breeding stock." "As my mate." The words came out fierce and certain. "As my equal. As the woman I love more than my own life." I stared at him, searching his face for any sign of deception. But all I saw was raw honesty and something that might have been hope. "The documents were written by a man who thought he could control fate through politics and breeding programs." His hands cupped my face gently. "But fate had other plans, didn't it? It gave me you. Not because of your genetics or your bloodline, but because you're the other half of my soul. How do I know you're not just saying what I want to hear? Because 6 months ago, I would have said anything to get you back. I would have lied, manipulated, commanded, whatever it took." His thumb traced across my cheek. "But tonight I almost lost you forever. And I realized that I'd rather have you hate me and be safe than love me and be dead." The sincerity in his voice made my chest tight. "Damon." "I know I don't deserve another chance," he continued. "I know I hurt you, betrayed your trust, treated you like an object instead of a person. But if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to you." I closed my eyes, feeling the mate bond humming between us. It was different now, changed by the awakening of my Moonblood power. Instead of the one-sided pull of alpha dominance, it felt balanced, equal. "If I come back," I said slowly, "things have to be different. Anything you want. I want to know everything. No more secrets, no more hidden agendas. If we're going to be mates, we're going to be partners. Done. And I want a voice in pack decisions. I'm not just going to sit quietly while you make choices that affect my life. The pack could use your perspective." His smile was soft and genuine. "You've always seen things differently than the rest of us. And if I ever want to leave again, you can." The words seemed to pain him, but he said them anyway. "I won't stop you. I won't command you. I won't send trackers after you. If you want to go, you can go." I opened my eyes and looked at him, really looked at him. The exhaustion, the worry, the love that he was trying so hard to hide. This wasn't the arrogant alpha king who had marked me 6 months ago. This was a man who had been broken by loss and was desperately trying to put himself back together. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay, I'll come home with you." I took a deep breath. "But we're taking this slow. No more marking ceremonies, No more grand gestures. We're going to figure out how to be together as equals, or we're not going to be together at all. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise after the longest night. I can work with that. Good. I looked around the destroyed diner, suddenly aware of how much explaining we were going to have to do. Now, how exactly are we going to get out of here without ending up on the evening news? Damon's grin turned wicked. Leave that to me. I have people who specialize in supernatural cleanup. As if on cue, a team of efficient-looking individuals in black suits appeared at the broken doorway. They moved through the diner with practiced ease, documenting the damage and setting up what looked like some kind of memory-altering equipment. Convenient, I observed. One of the perks of being Alpha King. He offered me his arm. Shall we go home? I hesitated for just a moment, then slipped my hand through his elbow. Let's go home. But as Lyra and Damon leave the destroyed diner behind, neither of them realizes that their troubles are just beginning. The supernatural world has been watching, and the awakening of Moonblood power has shifted the balance of power in ways that no one could have predicted. Ancient alliances are about to be tested. Old enemies are stirring, and somewhere in the shadows, a new threat is already making plans to claim the last Moonblood for their own dark purposes. The final chapter awaits, where Lyra will have to choose between the safety of hiding and the responsibility that comes with unimaginable power. Chapter 4, The Crown of Moonlight. 3 weeks later, the Blackthorn Pack territory looked different in the early morning light. Where I'd once seen only reminders of my lowly status, I now noticed the careful balance of nature and civilization that Damon had worked to maintain. Ancient oak trees stood sentinel over modern training facilities, and the pack house itself seemed to grow organically. From the landscape around it, I stood on the balcony of what had once been Damon's private chambers, and was now officially our chambers, watching the pack go about their morning routines. The change in their behavior toward me had been gradual but unmistakable. Where once they'd barely acknowledged my existence, now they offered respectful nods and genuine smiles. Word of what had happened at the diner had spread quickly through the supernatural community, just as Damon had predicted. But instead of making me a target, it had done something unexpected. It had made me a symbol. You're up early. Damon's voice was warm with sleep. As he wrapped his arms around me from behind, couldn't sleep. I leaned back against his chest, enjoying the solid warmth of him. Too much on my mind. The council meeting? I nodded. Today, representatives from every major supernatural faction in North America would gather to discuss the implications of my awakened Moonblood power. Some wanted to study me, others wanted to use me, and a few wanted to eliminate me entirely. Having second thoughts? Damon's voice was carefully neutral, but I could feel the tension in his body. About the meeting? No. I turned in his arms, meeting his concerned gaze. About us? Sometimes. Pain flickered across his features, but he didn't try to hide it. What can I do to help? It was such a simple question, but it represented everything that had changed between us. The old Damon would have issued commands or made demands. This Damon asked what I needed and actually listened to the answer. Just be patient with me, I said softly. I'm still learning how to trust again. I have all the time in the world. His hand cupped my cheek gently. We both do. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Alpha, came Marcus's voice from the hallway. The council representatives have arrived. Damon's expression shifted into the mask of authority I'd come to recognize. We'll be down in 10 minutes. Actually, I said, straightening my shoulders, I'd like to meet with them alone first. Both men went silent. Then Damon said carefully, Lyra, these are some of the most powerful supernatural beings in existence. They're not exactly known for their patience or diplomacy, which is exactly why I need to establish my position from the beginning. I moved to the closet and pulled out the outfit I'd chosen. Specifically for this meeting, a simple black dress that was elegant without being submissive, professional without being cold. If I walk in there as your mate, they'll see me as an extension of your power. But if I walk in as myself, they'll see you as a threat, Damon finished grimly. Good. I slipped into the dress and checked my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was someone I barely recognized. Confident, powerful, unafraid. It's time they understood that the Moonblood line didn't survive by accident. Damon was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Marcus will escort you to the conference room. I'll wait here until you're ready for me to join. Thank you. I rose on my toes to press a soft kiss to his lips, for trusting me to handle this. I've always trusted you, he said quietly. I just forgot to show it. The conference room in the pack house had been designed to intimidate. Massive windows overlooked the forest. Ancient weapons decorated the walls, and the long oak table could seat 30 people comfortably. Today, it held representatives from every major supernatural faction, and the tension in the air was thick enough to cut. I paused in the doorway, taking a moment to assess the players. At the head of the table sat Councilman Aldrich Greystone, the ancient werewolf who served as the nominal leader of the North American Supernatural Council. To his right was Lady Evangeline Frost, a vampire elder whose pale beauty couldn't quite hide the predatory gleam in her eyes. Across from her sat Madame Zelda Nightshade, the witch representative whose dark skin seemed to absorb the light around her. There were others, fey nobles, demon ambassadors, even a dragon shifter whose human form couldn't quite contain the fire burning in his golden eyes. All of them turned to look at me as I entered, and I felt the weight of their combined attention like a physical force. Gentlemen, ladies. I inclined my head politely but didn't bow. Thank you for coming. Miss Ashwood. Councilman Greystone's voice was gravelly with age. Or should I say Lady Blackthorn? Lyra will do fine. I moved to the chair at the opposite end of the table from Greystone, a position that put me in direct opposition to the council's authority. I understand you have questions about recent events. Questions? Lady Frost's laugh was like silver bells. My dear child, we have demands. Then you're going to be disappointed. I settled into my chair with deliberate calm. Because I'm not here to take orders. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Madame Nightshade leaned forward, her dark eyes glittering with interest. Bold words for someone so young. Age is relative, I replied smoothly. The power flowing through my veins is older than any of us. Power that belongs to the supernatural community as a whole, Greystone interjected. The Moonblood abilities were never meant to be hoarded by a single individual. And yet here we are. I folded my hands on the table, projecting a confidence I didn't entirely feel. The last of my line, awakened after centuries of dormancy. Tell me, Councilman, what exactly do you think gives you the right to dictate how I use my heritage? The greater good? Whose greater good? I cut him off, my voice sharp. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like each of you has your own agenda for my power. I turned to Lady Frost. The vampires want to use my blood to create hybrid soldiers, don't they? Creatures with the strengths of both species and the weaknesses of neither. The vampire elder's expression didn't change, but her silence was answer enough. And the witches, I continued, looking at Madame Nightshade, want to study my abilities to enhance their own magic. Moonblood power has always been connected to lunar cycles, and you think you can harness that connection. Knowledge should be shared, the witch said carefully. Should it? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then perhaps you'd like to share the location of your coven's most sacred grimoires. Or maybe the true names of your bound demons? Madame Nightshade's eyes flashed with anger, but she said nothing. As for the Fae, I turned to the ethereal woman who'd been silent throughout the exchange. You want to bind me to your court, don't you? Add Moonblood power to your collection of supernatural curiosities. The Winter Court offers protection, Lady Silvermoon said in a voice like wind chimes, in exchange for services. Slavery, you mean? Partnership. I've heard that before. I stood, beginning to pace around the table. You all speak of partnership, of the greater good, of protection. But what you really want is control. You want to use my power for your own ends, just like the vampires who tried to sacrifice me, just like the council that tried to breed me. You cannot stand alone against the forces that will come for you, Greystone warned. The awakening of Moonblood power has upset the balance of the supernatural world. There are those who will see you as a threat to be eliminated. Then let them come. I stopped pacing and faced the assembled representatives. Because I'm not the frightened Omega who ran away 6 months ago. I'm not the broken girl who discovered she was nothing more than breeding stock. I am the last of the Moonblood line, and I will not be caged, controlled, or used by anyone. The dragon shifter, Lord Pyrion, I remembered, spoke for the first time. Bold words. But power without wisdom is destruction waiting to happen. And wisdom without power is just pretty philosophy. I met his golden gaze steadily. I'm not asking for your approval or your permission. I'm telling you how things are going to be. And how is that? Lady Frost's voice was dangerously soft. I will use my power as I see fit. When I see fit, for causes I deem worthy. I returned to my chair, sitting with the regal bearing that seemed to come naturally now. I will not be bound by council law, fake contracts, or vampire politics. I will not be studied, dissected, or experimented upon, and I will not be threatened. You're declaring yourself above supernatural law, Greystone said slowly. I'm declaring myself outside it. I leaned forward, letting a hint of silver light flicker in my eyes. The Moonblood line predates your council, your courts, your covens. We were the bridge between species when you were all still trying to kill each other. And now that I'm the last, I get to decide what that legacy means. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel the weight of their combined power pressing against me, testing my resolve. But the Moonblood energy rose to meet it, creating a barrier that none of them could breach. Finally, Madame Nightshade spoke. What do you want from us? Recognition. The word came out stronger than I'd expected. I wanted acknowledged that I am not subject to any supernatural authority except my own. I want guarantees that no faction will move against me or mine without provocation. And I want a seat at this table when decisions are made that affect the supernatural community. Impossible! Greystone sputtered. You're barely 22 years old. You have no experience in politics, no understanding of the delicate balance we maintain. I have something better. I stood again, and this time I let the full force of my power fill the room. Silver light danced along my skin, and I felt the ancient magic of my bloodline awakening in response to my will. I have the ability to change everything. The representatives shifted uncomfortably as the power washed over them. But instead of the violent display they might have expected, I did something else entirely. I showed them what I'd seen in Morgana's memories. The great war between vampires and werewolves, the massacre of the Moonblood line, the centuries of hatred and mistrust that had followed. And then I showed them something else, a vision of what could be. Through the Moonblood connection, I let them experience true understanding between the species. Vampires who could walk in sunlight without burning. Werewolves who could control their transformations completely. Witches whose magic was amplified by lunar power. Fae whose glamour could heal instead of deceive. This is what my ancestors died for, I said softly as the visions faded. Not power over others, but power shared between all. The ability to bridge the gaps that have kept us at war for millennia. Lady Frost was the first to speak, her voice shaken. The things you showed us, are they possible? With Moonblood power as a catalyst? Yes, I let the silver light fade from my skin, but only if it's freely given, not stolen or coerced. Only if it's used to build bridges instead of walls. And you would do this? Lord Pyrion's golden eyes were intense. Share such power? With the right safeguards, yes. I looked around the table, meeting each representative's gaze. But it has to be a true partnership. Not the council dictating terms to a useful asset, but equals working together toward a common goal. Greystone was quiet for a long moment, his ancient eyes calculating. What kind of safeguards? A new treaty? One that recognizes the autonomy of all supernatural beings, not just the powerful ones. I felt the words flowing through me as if they'd been waiting my whole life to be spoken. Protection for rogues, for the packless, for those who don't fit neatly into your established hierarchies. An end to the breeding programs, the forced matings, the treatment of omegas as property. You're talking about restructuring the entire supernatural political system, Madame Nightshade observed. I'm talking about fixing it. I sat back down, my voice calm but firm. The current system failed to protect my bloodline. It failed to prevent Morgana's massacre of innocent omegas. It fails every day to protect the vulnerable from the powerful. If we're going to move forward together, that has to change. The door to the conference room opened, and Damon stepped inside. I felt the familiar warmth of the mate bond as he approached, but he didn't try to take control of the situation. Instead, he moved to stand behind my chair, a position of support rather than dominance. Alpha King, Greystone acknowledged. We were just discussing your mate's proposal. Lyra speaks for herself, Damon said simply. Whatever she's proposed, she has my full support. I felt a surge of gratitude for his restraint. The old Damon would have tried to negotiate on my behalf, to protect me from the political implications of my words. This Damon trusted me to handle my own battles. The proposal has merit, Lady Silvermoon said unexpectedly. The Fae courts have long believed that cooperation serves us better than conflict. Easy words from someone whose people can retreat to another realm when things get difficult. Lady Frost snapped. And yet we're here, aren't we? The Fae noble's smile was sharp. Offering our support to a new way forward. The vampires will need time to consider, Lady Frost said carefully. This represents a significant shift in how we've operated for centuries. The witches as well, Madame Nightshade added. Though I admit, the possibilities you've shown us are intriguing. Lord Pyrian nodded slowly. The dragon clans have always valued strength, but we also value wisdom. What you propose shows both. All eyes turned to Greystone, the nominal leader of the council. The ancient werewolf was quiet for a long moment, his weathered face unreadable. You're asking us to trust you, he said finally, to bet the stability of our entire world on the word of someone who's been awakened to her power for less than a month. I'm asking you to trust the process, I corrected. To believe that cooperation will serve us better than the current system of barely controlled hostility. And if you're wrong, if sharing Moonblood power creates more problems than it solves, I met his gaze steadily. Then we'll face those problems together as equals. But if we don't try, if we keep operating under the old system, then we're guaranteeing that the conflicts will continue. More Omegas will die. More innocents will be caught in the crossfire. And eventually, someone will succeed where Morgana failed. Greystone was quiet for another long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Very well. The council will consider your proposal. But understand, this will take time. Centuries of precedent don't change overnight. I understand. I stood, and the other representatives followed suit. But while you're considering, I want it known that any faction that moves against innocent supernaturals, especially Omegas, will answer to me personally. Is that a threat? Lady Frost asked. It's a promise. I let just a hint of silver light flicker in my eyes. The Moonblood line has been silent for too long. That silence ends now. One by one, the representatives filed out of the conference room, each lost in their own thoughts about what they'd witnessed. Finally, only Damon and I remained. That was... He began, then shook his head. I've never seen anything like it. You had them eating out of your hand by the end. I had them thinking, I corrected, which is more than anyone's managed in decades, apparently. He moved around the table to stand in front of me, his hands coming up to frame my face. I'm proud of you. The way you handled yourself, the vision you presented, it was incredible. It was terrifying, I admitted. Standing up to beings who could crush me without breaking a sweat. But you did it anyway. His thumb traced across my cheek. That's what makes you extraordinary, Lyra. Not your power, not your bloodline, you. The woman who chooses to fight for what's right, even when she's afraid. I leaned into his touch, feeling the mate bond humming contentedly between us. We're really doing this, aren't we? Trying to change the world? We're trying to make it better. His smile was soft and genuine. Together. Together, I agreed, and rose on my toes to kiss him. The kiss was gentle at first, a reaffirmation of the bond we'd been rebuilding over the past 3 weeks. But as his arms wrapped around me, pulling me closer, it deepened into something more urgent, more desperate. When we finally broke apart, both of us were breathing hard. "So," Damon said, his voice rough with desire, "what do we do now?" I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. "Now we go home. We figure out how to be mates and partners and equals. And we start building the world we want to live in. I like that plan." He offered me his arm, and I took it gladly. As we walked out of the conference room together, I caught sight of our reflection in the massive windows. We looked right, balanced, like two halves of a whole that had finally found their way back to each other. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges ahead, resistance from those who benefited from the current system, dangers from enemies we hadn't even identified yet. But for the first time since my power had awakened, I felt ready to face whatever came next, because I wasn't facing it alone anymore. Epilogue. 6 months later. The Moonblood Sanctuary stood at the heart of what had once been neutral territory between packlands. Built with contributions from every supernatural faction, it served as both a safe haven for displaced Omegas and a training center for those learning to work with Moonblood-enhanced abilities. I stood in the main courtyard, watching a group of young wolves practice their shifting techniques under the guidance of Marcus and several other experienced pack members. Nearby, a vampire and a witch worked together on a healing spell that combined their respective magics with a touch of Moonblood power. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions, still those who resisted the changes we were implementing, but it was progress. The council approved the final treaty amendments, Damon said, approaching from the main building with a satisfied smile. Full recognition of Omega rights, protection for rogues, and formal establishment of the sanctuary as neutral ground. All of them signed? I asked, not quite believing it, even the vampires. Apparently, Lady Frost was quite impressed by the healing applications you demonstrated last week. I shook my head in amazement. 6 months ago, I'd been a rogue Omega hiding in a human diner. Now I was helping to reshape supernatural society itself. Any word from the European Council? I asked. They want to meet with you next month. Seems word of the Moonblood awakening has spread across the Atlantic. Damon's expression grew serious. There are rumors of other bloodlines stirring, other ancient powers beginning to wake up. Good, I said firmly. The more voices we have in this conversation, the better. He studied my face for a moment. You're not worried about what that might mean? Other Moonbloods could challenge your authority, your vision for how this power should be used. Then we'll figure it out together. I turned to face him fully, taking his hands in mine. That's what partnerships are for, right? His smile was radiant. Right. A commotion near the training area caught our attention. One of the young wolves, a teenage Omega named Sarah who'd arrived at the sanctuary just last week, was glowing with the same silver light that had marked my own awakening. Another one. Damon breathed. I was already moving, crossing the courtyard to where Sarah stood frozen in shock, staring at her glowing hands. The other students had backed away, their faces a mixture of awe and fear. It's okay, I said softly, approaching her slowly. You're safe. We're going to help you understand what's happening. I don't understand, Sarah whispered. I'm just an Omega. I'm nobody special. You're somebody very special, I corrected, gently taking her glowing hands in mine. And you're not alone. As our skin touched, I felt it. The familiar pulse of Moonblood power, but different somehow. Younger, wilder, full of untapped potential, the bloodline wasn't extinct after all. It had been dormant, scattered, hidden in plain sight among ordinary wolves. And now, as the supernatural world began to change, it was awakening. I looked back at Damon, seeing my own wonder reflected in his eyes. We'd thought we were building a new world for the supernatural community. Instead, we'd awakened something that would change everything. Welcome to the family, I told Sarah, my voice warm with promise. Let me show you what you can do. As silver light danced between our joined hands, I felt the future stretching out before us, uncertain, challenging, but full of infinite possibility. The Moonblood line had survived against all odds, and now it was time to reclaim our place in the world. Together, we would build something better, something worthy of the sacrifices our ancestors had made, something that would ensure no Omega would ever have to run, hide, or be afraid again. The age of the Moonbloods had begun. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of love, power, and transformation. If you enjoyed this epic paranormal romance, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories like this one. What did you think of Lyra and Damon's story? Which moment was your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to see more stories set in the Moonblood universe, give this video a thumbs up. Until next time, keep believing in the power of love to change the world.